Hey everyone,
The financial aid priority deadline is just around the corner. Are you ready? I'm Judith Gutierrez,
and I'm Michael Lemus.
and this is Financial Paid.
All right, well, welcome back. We are knee deep into the financial aid season as we fastly approach the March 2nd deadline, which is the state priority deadline for students to go ahead and submit their FAFSA or their California Dream Act application. Today, we are super excited to be joined by a very special guest, Leslie Glover, who is the manager at the California Student Aid Commission, overseeing the Customer Assistance and Processing Unit, or as we like to call it, CAPU.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Leslie.
Welcome.
Hi. So happy to be here with you today.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you. And under this virtual platform, I know we're usually in the studio, and I wish we could have seen you in person, but I think we can make this work.
I think so.
We'll go ahead and hand the floor over to you. We'd love to give you an opportunity to just introduce yourself, share a little bit about your role and how you came about joining CSAC and your goal for the agency.
Okay, yeah, sure. So again, I'm Leslie Glover, again, the manager of Customer Assistance and Processing Unit. We like to call it student support as well. We're very well known as student support. A little bit about myself. I am a third generation college student. Yikes. So parents graduated from college and grandparents also went to college. So just kind of grew up with that insight, like, yeah, you need to go to college. College is important. So, how I came to join CSAC, I really wanted to work more closely with students and really try to see what I can do to really get the word out about how college enriches your life, and not just for you, but also for your, the future generations in your family. And I really feel like being part of the CSAC team is really a great way to do that, and really want to help get the word about college and what it can do for you and your family to the students that feel like they can't make it to college or they can't afford college.
That is so beautiful. And thank you for just inspiring me this early. When it comes to meeting students and families, I mean, it's not too often that we come across, folks that have even gone to college, and you being third generation, that provides such an interesting perspective. I'm first generation, but it's also really important to note that there's just all sorts of different students and families, some that have that background when it comes to higher education or post-secondary education, and some that don't. But the point is, we're here at CSAC, we're here to go ahead and help them regardless of where they're at. With that being said, so I know that you work with the California Student Aid Commission. So what is the role of student support?
So our real role is really to meet the students where they are and just assist them with the Cal Grant programs and any kind of questions or inquiries they may have. And that includes contacting them or them contacting us, whether it be by email, phone, or pretty soon by text message. So we are the first line for students when they have those questions regarding web grants for students or anything related to Cal Grant.
I'm curious to know what sort of frequently asked questions do you receive, Leslie, or what does student support usually handle in terms of any common trends we see with students and parents or guardians asking these very specific questions?
Definitely. So the main question, I would say the number one question that we receive from students is, what is their award status right now? Like, are they being paid? Will they receive their grant monies? Will they receive their Cal Grant? Those are definitely good. That's definitely a really good question to call and ask us about. But also, students can create a Web Grants for Students account where they can review their Cal Grant and just look at the status of it. And if there's anything they need to do, whether they have a to-do list from us or whatnot, they can locate that information there as well. And the Web Grants for Students website is going to be https://migrantinfo.csac.ca.gov. And that's really the best way for them to locate and review the status of their award.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for just clarifying that, because I think when it comes to submitting the application, sometimes what we end up hearing is what happens after. And you brought up web grants, and that's so important because that's basically the portal where students can go ahead and access information on their grant. They can claim their grant, they can change schools, all sorts of different things. Yeah. And people just seem to think sometimes it's like, well, I submitted it, I'm done, everything's good to go. And there are a lot of next steps. that need to be
That's
taken
true.
into consideration.
That's true.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's some additional actions, you're absolutely right, that they
Yeah.
would need to do. But the most important thing is you need to create a Web Grants for Students account. That way you can log into your account and check the information for yourself. It's a self-service. It's a really great self-service that we have here. And that portal it's pretty much everything that you really need to know about your Cal Grant or whatnot. And definitely create that particular account for yourself so that way you can look at the status again, and I can't even emphasize it more. That way you can check the status, claim your reward, see if you have anything that we need for you to do on a to-do list, and just look at the history of your awards as well.
Yeah, you can't take a out of sight, out of mind approach with these. It's almost like tracking a
True.
package.
Yeah.
You already completed the application.
Right.
You want to know where that package is headed. And if any bumps pop up on the road, you're able to address them. And that's what we're here for.
Right. That's true.
I love that comparison of tracking a package because it's like you're tracking your grant. It's like you apply, then you're tracking, hey, what aid do you actually, what are you being awarded? And there's so many different forms of financial aid out there. It's really easy to confuse, like, okay, I got a whole bunch of offers. What does this mean? And so it is helpful to be able to just track that in this centralized place that you're mentioning, Leslie. And with that being said, when it comes to before they even submit, right? Like they're preparing, students, families are getting ready to apply for financial aid via the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application. When it comes to how to best prepare, do you have any tips for that in terms of just avoiding issues or delays when it comes to applying?
Okay, number one rule when it comes to applying is make sure you know your deadlines. Like Judith was mentioning at the top of the show, is that you want to, the deadline for FAFSA is fast approaching March 2nd. You want to make sure you have everything you need. That's going to really pretty much be your personal information, of course. You want to know, make sure that you have your GPA information available if you need that information, but really is making sure you have your FAFSA ready. One thing that a lot of information that you may need, or actually information you may need regarding the FAFSA is sometimes you may need your parent or guardian's tax information for not this most current year, but the year prior, and maybe even the year before that. That's really important to know. And a lot of us are going to need that to complete our FAFSA. So you got to make sure you are checking in with your parent and guardian, especially if you are not independent, and get that information before you really start getting into your FAFSA. The plus thing about a FAFSA is you can always pause it until you get the information, come back to it and finish it. But sometimes students may forget that, oh, I didn't finish my FAFSA. I started, but I didn't finish. And usually I believe that FAFSA will kick out a reminder indicating that it's not finished. But we also here at CSAC will kick out a reminder indicating that, hey, you started your FAFSA, but you haven't completed it. So we like to try to send out as many reminders as we can to remind students that that deadline is coming up. And really that FAFSA deadline is so important. If you don't have your FAFSA in by the 2nd of March, sometimes that'll prohibit you from receiving different types of grants, and that includes Cal grants. So really emphasizing to get that FAFSA completed.
Definitely. And we can't emphasize that deadline enough. It's March 2nd every year, priority deadline.
Every year.
Get your FAFSA and the California Dream Act application in on time, and we can definitely work with you with the rest. And to your point, Leslie, I know we talk a lot about the FAFSA deadline. You hear colleges, high schools, just students and families talking about FAFSA and FAFSA. California Dream Act application also applies to this if you're a California student who is undocumented, AB 540, I believe. But you also have that March 2nd deadline. At what point, essentially, does it become an issue? Say a student is applying for FAFSA in this case, CADA, California Dream Act aside, FAFSA, when does it become an issue for CSAC? And when should a student and family member reach out to FAFSA with a question?
Okay, so I would say that for us, we're going to take care of anything Cal Grant related. So any of those programs, like you're mentioning, the California Dream Act application, Cal Grant programs such as Golden State Teachers Grant, middle class scholarship as well, those are going to be CSAC, where you're going to contact us. But if you're having any kind of issue with FAFSA, if you need any kind of assistance with your FAFSA application, or you have other questions about the FAFSA or whatnot, or if you're having some kind of technical issue with FAFSA, that's when you want to contact Federal Student Aid, which you can contact them at studentaid.gov.
Awesome. And thank you for providing that clarification, because a lot of the time students are asking about technical issues related to their actual FAFSA application that sometimes may be tied to the actual FAFSA platform. And of course, we understand things are confusing. So they're like, well, CSAC told me about FAFSA, so shouldn't I just be contacting you? It's
Right.
so important to know who to contact for what. We're actually, I would say, a really cool space because we offer the California Dream Act application and we actually manage that application, meaning that
Right.
if they did have technical questions, they would be contacting us. So it's important to know, like, hey, if it's a FAFSA thing and it's very specific to the FAFSA platform, then there is a separate contact. But the good news is they can always start off with us. So if they don't
That's
know
true.
who to contact or what they're even asking about, they can definitely still start off with us. And I think that brings me to another point and another question I have. So the FAFSA, the California Dream Act application, just financial aid overall, it's very much a family conversation. And
Right.
for a lot of these students, probably the majority of them, they're needing to provide information or financial related information from their parents or family members. And so it's really important to also bring in that part of the conversation of, hey, your family is part of this whole journey with you. So it's not just yourself. There are some that are actually independent students. So of course, they're
True.
just providing information for themselves. But when we're speaking about families, if students and families are seeking more information from CSAC and what we actually have to offer, how can they go about getting that information?
I would definitely recommend first just going to our site, and you're going to want to go to where the students really can find a lot of information. So that's just going to be csac.ca.gov/students. And that's going to give you such a wealth of information. There's also a set of frequently asked questions there. You can locate our student forms there. You can also find out more about financial aid programs that we have here at CSAC and just additional information. Of course, also a link to how to get 2 web grants for students. But that's really our great resource there for both parents and students to go to find out more about seeking information about what we have to offer.
Yeah. So you can't
Another
forget.
resource also as well, you can always email us if you had any additional questions, but for that immediate information right there in front of you, definitely jump on the internet, go to the CSAC website again, csac.ca.gov/students. So much information there as well. And you can also, of course, email student support. We're more than happy to answer your questions at studentsupport@csac.ca.gov. And you can also give us a phone call as well. You can go to our website, contact us, and all of our contact information is there as well.
So essentially, CSAC has your back.
Absolutely.
It is a very exciting time, but we also recognize it is overwhelming just the same. So we want to make sure that we are able to answer all your questions. Michael Lemus and myself actually monitor our social media platforms as well. And we see a lot of questions come in, and we just want to do our best in referring students and families to the right people, the right experts in our own agency. So feel free to check us out there. We are at CA Student Aid on Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook. So feel free to send those questions over. But Leslie and team are the experts who are here to help.
Absolutely. And our team is more than happy to help you. They're definitely so passionate about the programs that we have here at CSAC, and they are waiting to hear from you. That is what we are here for.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie. It's always a pleasure just to interact with you on a day-to-day basis. I know Judith and I are constantly in contact with you and your team, but thank you for joining us. I hope that our audience is just gaining some really great information on, one, how they can go ahead and access us, but two, to just put a face behind that screen, right? A lot of the times, and as Judith mentioned, we manage our social media accounts. Sometimes they don't get to see the actual faces that, work at CSAC. We're actual human beings. You're seeing us right now. You're hearing us on your phone.
That's true.
We're actual human beings that really care about the work that we do, and we really want to go ahead and bring that message to home, literally to the homes of students and their families as we navigate this financial aid process. Because as Judith mentioned, it can be very overwhelming, and really what we see ourselves as far as a role that we play is just making it a little bit easier, or hopefully a lot easier, for these students and families to not just access financial aid, but complete it and eventually get into an institution that is within the post-secondary education realm, allowing them to go ahead and pursue what it is that they want to pursue in their lives. So thank you, Leslie, for just joining us for this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, we are more than happy to help you if you have any questions, and definitely contact us. The best way to contact us is by email. Again, studentsupport@csac.ca.gov. And we're more than happy to help. And if I can just leave a couple more tips here for the students as well. I know a lot of the contact is going to be revolving around their status check. Again, we have to emphasize just creating that Web Grants for Students account is going to be so important. And then also looking and reading at any correspondence that we send to you. It's going to come from California Student Aid Commission with a comma, more than likely, or dash student support. Any kind of correspondence that we send you, please really read it in totality so that you can see if there's anything that you need to do, if there's anything else that we need for you to do. We like to send out reminders for you if you need to fill out an application, or if there's something that you need to do on your to-do list, we're going to let you know. And it's, we are so looking forward to having our text messaging come out in the next month, and just reading, or actually this coming month here, and just basically getting that word out and just sending more reminders. So definitely when that starts coming up, you want to make sure that you're opting in for our text messaging so that you can receive those reminders. And we're going to have a lot of different types of text messaging coming out. So not just reminders about deadlines or your to-do list, but definitely possibly information that's going to ask you to look at your account to see if there's anything else you need to do, or information regarding your award status. So definitely look out for that. Make sure you're opting into our text messaging, because that's going to be a faster way to get into contact with you. We are so excited to add that to our channel communication here at CSAC. And that's, again, coming up very soon. Another tip I'd like to leave is, when you receive your communication or anything regarding your Cal Grant or whatnot, just ensure that you are keeping track of what your CSAC ID is, but not only just your CSAC ID. Make sure that you keep track of what email that you are using. So like Jules was saying earlier, just kind of like if you're waiting for a package or whatnot, if you're signed up for some kind of incentive for an app or whatnot, make sure that you're keeping track of your username and your sign-in. That's going to be usually your email address. So try to make sure that you have that information set aside, kept somewhere safe where you know where it is, so you can always go back to look for it. So if you're logging into your Web Grants for Students, you can just go. I keep a lot of different things on my phone and elsewhere, so you can go to your notes in your phone where you can keep it safe, and go back and reflect to it and say, okay, this is where I have my username and my password written down here. I can just go back and I know where my sign-in is for my Web Grants for Students. So that's definitely important tip for sure. Just make sure you keep up with the information so you have an easier time with logging into your Web Grants for Students account.
Thanks, Leslie. And I'll just add actually something real quick to what you just mentioned. So the importance of that email address. So a lot of the students will use their high school email address.
Yes.
And then they graduate and those emails may become inactive. And
That's
so
right.
what we recommend is that students either use another email or create another email that they can go ahead and utilize, that they'll continue to utilize when they either go to a community college or a trade school or a university, whatever that may be, but an email that they know they're going to be checking. The other thing that happens is that they use the same email that they use for everything, and then it gets jumbled.
Information gets buried, right?
Yes, yes. And what we hear sometimes from the schools is they let them know, create an email that's going to be specifically for school purposes, right? That's going to be for financial aid, it's going to be for admissions, whatever that may be, whatever the student feels comfortable with. But thank you for just emphasizing that, because we hear that time and time and again. It's like, I never got that email. And then they look and it's like, oh, there's hundreds of emails there. So it's sometimes hard to navigate, because this day and age, especially in technology era, we get tons of emails all the time. So maybe it is a little bit easier to separate it out. And the other thing I'll just quickly add on too is on a texting platform that may be out sooner than we think. So we're very excited about that. And it will provide us an opportunity to just, keep up to date with students. We know that because there are so many emails out there, sometimes it is easier to just get a text message and be like, you know what, I'm gonna follow up on this right now.
Absolutely.
Through hundreds of emails. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
Yeah, for sure, Michael. I definitely would say, just to add back onto that for sure, like you said, a lot of students will use their high school ID, and that's going to be, or high school email, that's going to be tied to their high school. So once they graduate, they may not have access to that. Same thing when they're attending school. So if they're attending a community college and then they transfer to a four-year university, you might not have access to that community college email address any longer. So definitely you want to use a personal email that you are routinely using, or if you want to make it specific for your financial aid, you can do that as well. You can do as many emails as you want. We just want you to make sure you keep track of the one that you use for CSAC.
No, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for being here with us today. I think these were very useful tips. The nostalgia is coming back, and I do not miss my financial aid application process. But I am so glad to know that I did have the support I had, and that I was able to turn to organizations like CSAC and I'm glad that we are able to share this information today. So wanted to
Absolutely.
thank you for your work and thank you for your time to sit here
Thank
today
you.
and explain what you do.
Thank you so much for having student support on. We are more than happy to spread the word about what we do and how we help students and just being there for the students. And, CSAC's got the students and the parents back. So, absolutely.
Definitely. I love it.
Thank you, Leslie. Well, we hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Awesome. So the fun part, that was fun, but the other fun part, which I'm so excited about, is the myth buster that we love to do at the end of every episode. So I'll go ahead and read maybe some of the myths we've been receiving, and then Michael, I'll turn it to you to bless us with some expertise and some answers. So one of our myth today is a student says I've heard that the financial aid application asks for prior year tax information. I was making a lot more money then. That changed during the pandemic, and I'm currently not working. I probably won't qualify if you're only looking at my old salary.
Wow, that's such a great myth to just go ahead and talk about right now, because we're still living through the pandemic. We know that, it's been a couple of years now, unfortunately, but we're making it through. And this is really important because for a lot of people, their finances changed, whether it's for the student themselves or maybe they have parents that lost a job. I mean, a lot of things have changed throughout this entire process, especially over the last 2 years. And so when students are submitting their financial aid applications, yes, so the tax information that they're providing is based off of prior years. However, they can still submit the application and then they can go ahead and actually update their records. And that can actually be done with the school that they're actually wanting to go to. And so that's done with the financial aid office, and they can speak to a staff representative from the financial aid office at their school. And what can happen is that with the updating of that information, the financial aid office can go ahead and do something called a professional judgment. Essentially, they look through the documents, they're like, hey, the student's finances have changed. So that means that the aid package may need to change and be updated as well. So that's super important. But even outside of the pandemic, if, for example, let's say we weren't going through the pandemic and just something changed. I know this happened to me when I was actually in school. I think it was my junior year of college. My dad's finances changed, but he also had a surgery at the time. And so it actually appeared as if he had made more that year based off of taxes, but he had a surgery, so that changed things. And so that allowed me to actually still keep my grant. And then for the financial aid office to go ahead and look into it, they're like, okay, this is actually how much you qualify for. And it wasn't just based off of solely the tax documents, because we know that that's only going to tell so much of the story. And so that allows students to still be able to be in communication with their financial aid office and then see if they can get something known as the professional judgment. So we highly encourage, please submit the applications, but also if things have changed and you know that, just alert your schools and then they can go ahead and look into that as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Michael, for helping answer that myth. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Financial Aid. I hope it was really helpful. And we can't emphasize enough, March 2nd. Right, Michael? That priority deadline.
Yes.
Get to it. If you haven't already, submit something and just, leave the rest to us. We're here to support. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.